Good morning or good afternoon where you are, wherever you are. Welcome to day 4 of the Fertile Mind Summit. We are completely blessed today to be with the gorgeous Courtney Townley. Now, Courtney is a nutrition coach. She is a strength coach. She is a life coach. She is the host of the amazing podcast, Grace and Grit. And she's all about helping women mend the relationship with their body, which is exactly why I got Courtney on here today, because on our fertility journey, it is really rough and we get to this point where we don't have a great relationship with our body because it's not doing what we want it to do. So Courtney, I would welcome first of all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
And do you just want to start off by telling us just a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and what got you to being where you are right now?
Well, sure. So I literally came out of the womb dancing. My mother tells me, like, I have been dancing my little heart out since I think I came into the world. And I literally pursued dance until I was in my mid-20s. And if you know anything about the dance world, it's not super lucrative, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's difficult to make a living. At least it was when I was dancer. And so as a way of putting food on the table, I was looking for other things I could do. And long story short, it got me into the fitness industry. As a dancer, I was conditioned with Pilates. So I was doing a lot of Pilates work, and that was kind of my entry point into the fitness world. And I won't bore you with all the details, but the fitness world opened me up to a lot of opportunity to work with a lot of different modalities of movement. And because I love movement, that was just a really great fit. But when I approached my late 20s, I was kind of the fit looking trainer who didn't feel so good. Right. So I looked fit and healthy, but I had, my energy really faded at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I could literally take a nap every day for 3 hours. My digestion was off, my joints were hurting, and I was young. So I was getting a lot of red flags that things were not in order. Like my health was very surface level. And around the same time, I was training some clients who were literally transforming before my eyes. So not just getting leaner and getting stronger, but they were like bright-eyed and their hair was healthy and their complexion was glowing. And I had watched this transformation in them. So I was really curious, like, what the heck is going on here? And this sounds terrible, but I knew the results they were getting was not from the work they were doing with me. Because all I was doing was addressing movement, right? So of course I asked them, what the heck? Like, what is happening here? And they all happened to be working with the same health coach. Mm-hmm. So lo and behold, I hired that health coach. I worked with her for 2 years. And what I learned about what health truly is, of course, totally transformed my perspective. There's no way that I could just go back to training clients in the gym, right? And just working on their physicality. Because I really knew why people were coming to me was not to get more fit. It was actually just to feel better. Mm-hmm. They wanted more confidence. They wanted their body to support them. And I was kidding myself and them by just addressing movement, right? And now that I knew better, I had to teach better. So of course I went through a lot of channels to get educated, and just continued my journey of loving movement and sharing movement, but addressing health in a much bigger conversation, mm-hmm. right? Health is so multifaceted, right? And you can't separate physical health from mental health, from spiritual health, from environmental health. Like it's all connected, right? So I got really fired up about this health conversation, and people I found out were really hungry for it. So I felt like I was kind of hitting a nerve with people. And really that got me to start the podcast, because I just felt like health wasn't being talked about from the perspective that I talk about it from. It is now, right? There's more people having this conversation, but 5 years ago, it really was, diet and exercise. That's how you get healthy.
Yeah.
So, I will tell you that also kind of led me into like the development of the podcast, and hearing what people were so hungry for really led me to pursuing my life coach work, because what I realized is I was always hyper focused on telling a client what they could do specifically to improve their health. I was armed with a lot of great information. But the reality is people are not going to take consistent action unless they change their mindset about the work.
Yes. Yep.
So I was missing a major piece in the conversation. And anyway, that led me into life coach work. And it's totally transformed my coaching. Like, it's just so interesting how differently I coach now than I did just even 3 years ago.
Because you can't just make someone do something. Like, they need to want to do it for just a specific reason. And sometimes just to lose weight, you know, is not enough. Like, it's the thoughts actually behind it. Like, how do you, I mean, you can't motivate someone. Like, how do you get them so that they actually, you know, want to do something or move their body? Like, you know, the thought of losing 5 kilos or something like that might not get someone off their ass and into the gym.
Yeah. And a lot of people think it will, right? They sign up for all these crazy protocols because they just want to lose a few pounds. But then they have to keep recycling that process over and over and over again because they're not really making meaningful change. Mm-hmm. Right? And so behavioral psychology tells us, the research of it shows us that we need to make people intrinsically motivated, meaning they develop their own motivation. Yeah. And you can't do that by giving somebody a list of rules and regulations for what to do. Mm-hmm. Right? So, you know, I always say that I teach the very unsexy work. I basically, you know, get clients to be introspective about their own lives and to start carving out their own pathway. And that can be met with a lot of resistance because we want to be told what to do. It's just easier. Mm-hmm. But that's not how meaningful change happens. Like, we have to have agency in our own process. And that's really what I help people do. I help them to build confidence in their ability to lead themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it does get back to the whole mindset or the feeling part of things as well. So, you know, like you want to create this feeling in someone so that then they want to do it. And the more we dig into our feelings, like, that's really scary. And that's something that this, you know, the summit is all about, is trying to bring awareness to, we need to be feeling this stuff. We need to dig into our feelings a little bit. And that kind of gets into, like, what I'd love to know what your view is on, you know, like, mind-body connection and how, like, the connection between what happens in here or how we can develop that and then the impact that it actually has on our body.
For sure. Well, scientifically, there is absolutely a mind-body connection, right? Because we know that there's a vagus nerve that connects the brain to the intestines, right? Like, there's literally like a highway between our brain and our body. Plus, we have this genius nervous system, right? Connecting our brain to our physical being. So there is no argument that what happens in our brain will definitely affect our physiology, and what happens in our physiology can affect our brain, right? So this is why when our gut microbiome is off kilter, it can cause depression, or it can cause mood disorders or sleep disruptions, right? So our brain health affects our physical health, and our physical health affects our brain health. But I also am a big believer, and this is something that I practice in my own life, and it's something I teach my clients, is that the way you think inspires emotion. So the meaning you put on things in your life is what creates emotion for you. And emotion is what inspires action or inaction. So if you don't like the results you're getting in your life, right, from like certain behaviors, we have to go back to how we're thinking that's driving that behavior. Mm-hmm. So I'm a huge believer in mind-body connection. And I really think it's just craziness that we ever tried to separate the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what were we thinking?
Yeah. And so how do we make that connection? Because the thing is, as I was saying earlier, you know, we get on our fertility journey and all of a sudden we have our body, you know, when we were younger, you know, I don't know about anyone else, but I tried to be healthy. I did exercise. I was a dancer as well. And so we go along, and then all of a sudden we've tried our whole life not to get pregnant. pregnant because, you know, we're on contraception and everything like that. And then we get to this point where, okay, well, we want to have a baby, but all of a sudden our body's not doing what it should be. Like, how do we mend that relationship between, you know, what we thought that it would do because we used to love our body, but now all of a sudden it's just letting us down?
Yeah. Well, I think it's unique, first of all, to love your body. I don't think the general population does love their body. I think they're used to criticizing it and judging it and focusing on everything that's wrong with it. But I do. So I think it's awesome that you're in a space, you know, of loving your body when you went into your fertility journey. And I definitely respected my body. I don't know if I loved it, but I definitely respected my body when I went into my fertility journey.
Well, I say that, you know, I look back now and I love my body.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course, hindsight, right?
Wow, that was amazing. Why was I, you know, why did I think that my thighs weren't great?
Yes. But how do we mend our relationship with our body when it's not meeting our expectations? We're doing what we feel are the right things, and then we're not getting the outcome we expect. And the way that I like to think about it is, how would you mend any relationship? Right? You wouldn't berate the person. If you had a disagreement with somebody, or your husband messed up doing something, if you harp on what a terrible job he did and all the ways in which he let you down, you think that's going to help the relationship? It's not, right? So we mend relationships in our life by, number one, showing up and asking good questions, right? Like, what can I do here to help support the health of this relationship, right? And we trust ourselves, right? And we teach the other person to trust us. And I feel like our bodies, in many cases, we've just trained our bodies to not trust us because we aren't feeding them well. We aren't getting enough sleep. We're not showing up consistently to support them. And then we wonder why they can't do what we're asking it to do, right? Mm-hmm. So I just like the perspective of looking at mending your relationship just like you would mending any other relationship, right? How are you showing up? How are you communicating? How are you taking responsibility for what you can do? And if you can answer those questions, you're going to be on a really great path to healing that relationship.
Yeah. And I think asking those questions is the really hard thing as well, because we really know that we should be doing more. We really know that we could be doing more. So I think stopping and asking those questions is probably the hardest. I think it's the hardest thing, like, because it's looking in that mirror and going, okay, yeah.
I saw a quote the other day that said, the distance between knowing and doing is 1,000,000 miles.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's true for most people. Most of us, like most women, know the things they could be doing, but they aren't committed to a daily practice of doing those things. So they're not getting the benefit of them.
And so how do we get to that? How do we get to that point where we are committed? Is it a lot deeper?
Well, I think what I teach my community is that it's kind of a multi-folded exercise, right? So first and foremost, we have to know why we're committed to doing the thing in the first place. Right. And I always tell my clients, like, if your reason isn't compelling enough, if you don't have like a visceral response to your reason, you're probably not going to show up. You're probably going to negotiate your way out of it. So when a woman says to me, I want to lose weight, right? Or I want to get more sleep, or I want to improve my energy. Okay, all that's great. Why? Right. And she'll tell me, well, I want to show up more fully in my life. Okay, great. Why? And I am the annoying kid. I keep asking why at least 5 or 6 times. And what usually comes out in the end is a super powerful reason. And it's usually something they want to feel, right? They want to feel more happy. They want to feel more confident. They want to feel whatever, fill in the blank. And they're telling themselves that they can't feel those things until they accomplish that little task, right? Or that consistent action, or lose the weight. And I tell them actually the opposite is true. We have to generate those emotions now in order to show up for the thing.
Yeah.
right? And that's a really hard thing for people to wrap their heads around, right? No, I can't be happy until I lose 30 pounds. Really? Tell me about the best day of your life. And they tell me about their wedding day or the birth of their first child. And you can hear the happiness elevating in their voice as they're describing the story.
Yeah.
And then I point out to them, do you see how the way you were just thinking generated happiness? So you can't tell me anymore that you can't be happy until you lose the weight.
Yes. And I think that's what we do as well. You know, so just thinking about what you're saying and relaying it into, you know, someone who's trying to fall pregnant, we put so much weight on, I need to have a baby in order to be happy. And we hold on to this. And that is what drives us every single day. We wake up thinking about it. We go to bed thinking about it. We do all of the things that we think that we're supposed to do. We go out there and search for that magic pill, that magic exercise, something that someone else did. And so that's our motivating factor, is have a baby. But what happens is that, you know, if we have a miscarriage or we have a failed cycle, that goal seems to be getting so far away that we're just like, well, I just give up. You know, I'm just going to keep on this perpetuating cycle. So it's a matter of, and I do say to the ladies that are in my community, is like, the sole goal can't just be to have a baby. Like that just can't be it. Like, and what you were saying before is why do you want to have a baby? Why do you want to do this? And I think it's a matter of digging even further to get that deep-seated reason, because what happens when they do have a baby? Then what's the goal then? Like, and then we get to that point where we're like, well, I've just had a baby, but I'm still not happy.
100%. I totally relate to what you're saying. And I think we get so hyper-focused, right? When we've had a failed pregnancy or a cycle, that we get so hyper-focused on making it work, because that's kind of the mentality that women have. We're doers, like we're going to make it work, you know? And then it's almost to the point that it starts to hurt other areas of our life, right? So, and again, please do not hear me saying that I think weight loss and fertility are like the same thing. They're not, obviously, but I'm going to use this example of weight loss because I think a lot of women can relate to it. But a lot of women say, well, when I lose the 30 pounds, I'll be happy. And what I teach my clients is to be happy now. And how do we do that? We focus on all the things about their body that are going right. We focus on all the things in their life that are awesome, right? And there's a lot of resistance to them wanting to do that at first, but once they get in the groove of it, right, it becomes so much easier and almost kind of like a tribute to their body to show up in the ways that they've been resisting showing up before. So it completely changes the dynamic. So yes. I think you're spot on. I think it's you know, I mean, it's not easy to hear, don't hyper focus on it. Like, don't look at that fly on the wall. All you want to do is look at the fly on the wall, right? Yeah. But what else about your life is so amazing, right? And I'll tell you, you know this, that I had a couple miscarriages before I had my son. And the first one, both of them were like, there was just so much mourning and grieving. And I do want to say here and now that I believe every woman's grieving process is different. And every woman's healing process is different. So for me, my first miscarriage was really just so almost traumatic in a way, because I was traveling abroad. I was in Germany. I was so excited to be pregnant. And I miscarried in a foreign country away from my family. And so there was that. And I came home and of course I did what most women do. I beat myself up. I hyper focused, like what's wrong with my body? Why isn't this working? And I was hell bent on getting pregnant again. Right? So it took me about a year to get pregnant again. I got pregnant, same thing. There's no way I'm going to have another miscarriage. Like my body's, it's totally built for this. I had another miscarriage. And for me, after the anger and after all the hormones got out of my system, right? And after some grieving, I really took stock of my life and asked myself, what if I can't have a baby? Right? Like, am I going to use this to define the rest of my life? And for me, that answer was a hell no. That I love my life so much in so many different ways that, you know, a baby would enhance that, but it's not going to take away all that other brilliance to my life. And so I just made a decision in my head that maybe I'll have a baby, maybe I won't. I don't know. And I'm doing everything I can to support my body, right? And I have an incredible support team of doctors and people helping me to carry a pregnancy to term. But at the end of the day, I really just got to a space with myself where I was going to love my life regardless. And that's what I was really committed to. And maybe having a baby was going to look different. Maybe I was going to adopt. My husband and I talked about that for a long time. So eventually I did get pregnant. Honestly, I don't even know how, because when I got pregnant, my husband and I were crazy busy. I feel like we weren't even seeing each other. And it just, my focus was totally off of the baby, which I honestly think contributed to me getting pregnant.
Yeah.
You know, because I just wasn't so hyper focused on it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, you know, like I want to tell people who are watching, like you've done years and years of work, inner work to get to where you are, because that is such and I admire you for being able to get to that point where you're just so focused on, okay, this is the reality of it. I'm going to focus on other things, because, you know, a lot of us get to that point where we're just so consumed that we can't see a way out, and we're not thinking rationally about it. We're not being reasonable. We're just full of so much anger. So, you know, what are some of the things that you had been doing leading up to that to get you to the point where you're just so clear on, you know, like, I'm either going to do it or I'm not. I'm going to focus on other things. It's not going to consume me. How do you get to that point?
You know, I think for me, it was a recognition that I was causing myself to suffer unnecessarily. I was contributing to my pain in a very big way. Of course, it's painful to have a miscarriage, you know, and of course, there's a mourning process and there's a sadness to it that I think is very important to allow yourself to feel. And I also feel that I really decided that I was committed to making my life a good one and a happy one. And in order to do that, I needed to focus on the things that were working and still respect my body and seek out resources that could help me to start a family, but not necessarily make that the sole focus of my life. And it's, you know, yeah, I think some people have to work a little harder at that than others. You know, I just do. I think it's the way we're wired. I think it's the way we practice thinking over time, because I wish I had the practices now that I wish that I had these practices when I was first, you know, when I was 27, when I was 28 and experiencing all these miscarriages. But what got me through it was just a deep faith that my life was going to be great regardless, you know, because I was going to make it that way.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize I was doing this at the time, but I was being very careful about the meaning I put on what a miscarriage was. I chose not to make it mean that I was broken. I chose not to make it mean that there was something wrong with me. I chose to not make it mean that the rest of my life was going to be unfulfilling because I couldn't have a baby. Right? I just feel like it was taking responsibility for the tape that was playing in my head. I could still be sad. I could still be disappointed, and simultaneously ask myself those really good questions. How can I get more support? How can I nourish my body in a way that might help it to facilitate a pregnancy? Right? Who can I talk to that knows more about this? So instead of criticizing, berating myself and feeling guilty, I utilized that time and energy and converted it into really good questions that led me to really good resources.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting you say, you know, and this might trigger a lot of women as well, that you chose. And a lot of this time on the journey, I think we feel like it's out of our control, that there's so much stuff that's out of our control. But really, at the end of the day, there's one thing that's out of our control, and that's whether it's a positive or a negative result when we on that stick. But we have so much control over everything else. And I think that a lot of the time we feel like we're floating because we don't know what to do, because we don't know what to focus on. And I think focusing internally is just some really, really scary stuff, because we just don't know what we're going to find in there, and I think that you are, you're a testament to the fact that you can actually get to that point. And do you think it was because you were doing a lot of physical activity as well? Like, I'm not saying that that's all just the be all end all, but the fact that you're actually doing that to begin with, that obviously exercise has a huge impact on our body and our mind.
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of people, that's what the doctors would say. And, people who were alongside of me as I was going through this definitely were implying that, maybe you're exercising too much. But, I never believed that to be true, because I wasn't a fanatic exerciser, and I really believed that a healthy body should be able to still maintain, a general, layer of exercise in their life. So I don't really think that that's what it was, because when I did get pregnant and all through my pregnancy, I exercised just as much as I ever had, and it was fine. But I chose to believe that it just wasn't time.
Yeah.
That's one of the beliefs that I chose to really lean into, is that it wasn't time, that nature is wise. My body is supporting me, meaning your body is always responding to messaging hormonally with, all the chemistry in your body. So your body is never against you. It is always for you. Mm-hmm. And there was something there was a message it was getting that I did not know, that was this is not a viable pregnancy. Yeah. And so I chose to just have that faith in my body that it knew what it was doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It knew what it's doing. And I just wanted to say this too, that trauma is never your fault. I do believe that miscarriages and failed pregnancies can be a traumatic experience, and trauma is never our fault, but healing from it is. I mean, it's never our fault, but healing from it is always our responsibility, right? That is where our responsibility lies, is in the healing process.
Yes.
And that has everything to do with how we think, because we won't show up to do the things that heal us if we're beating ourselves up and suffocating under guilt, right? And constantly criticizing. Mm-hmm. All that's going to do is make us want to, crawl into a dark hole and not emerge.
Yeah.
But to be proactive about our healing, we need to be willing to show up and try some things on. And that starts with the dialogue in your head.
So good. So good. That is so important. Now, you have on your website 10 simple things you can do today to reignite your health. Do you just want to talk us through some of those things, just so that we can give the ladies some practical things that they can be doing right now in order to get to that point?
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of times when we're trying to elevate our health, our culture has been indoctrinated to believe great big measures and short time frames to create really drastic results. Mm-hmm. And we know that's a recipe for failure, right? Mm-hmm. So the first thing I would just lean into is simple and small. I call it the KISS method, keep it stupid simple. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you think that you can lean into a 30-minute activity today, like let's just say that you haven't been exercising at all, and you decide, I need to exercise because I know it's good for my body. Please don't start with an hour a day, 7 days a week, because you're going to set yourself up for failure. And when you fail early on, you have no motivation to continue. We need you to be successful, because success breeds more success. So instead of an hour, 7 days a week, maybe you commit to 20 minutes, 3 days this week, right? Or just 5 or 10 minutes today, something very small. Maybe you go outside and, go play with your dog in the yard, something that simple. I would also say hydrate, because water is a part of every biological process in the human body, right? It really is a big deal. I mean, come on, you're mostly water. And so if you want more energy quickly, you want to be able to focus better, you want clearer skin, you want your digestion to work better, just drink some water. That's such a simple thing to do. It's free, it's accessible, not a difficult thing to do. And then, of course, one of the things that I really heavily lean into with my clients is we cannot underestimate the power of rest and restoration. And I think a lot of women, and a lot of this is, directly linked to failed pregnancies, is stress, right? Stress is not just mental stress. Stress is all the things in your life that act as stressors on your life. So yes, mental stress, but nutritional stress, lack of sleep or lack of rest, your environmental stressors, also being, dehydrated absolutely can contribute, under or over exercising. All of those things contribute to your stress bucket. And your job is to make sure that your stress bucket isn't overflowing, right? We want to keep it contained in the bucket. And so if you have a big project going on at work right now, and you haven't been sleeping that great, is it the best exercise, or is it the best thing to also be training for a marathon? Probably not, right? Like, we have to be reasonable about what we can do and how much stress we're truly under. So sleep is really where our body massively decompresses. Our brain cashes out, our hormones reset, our immune system is fortified. And I just know an awful lot of women who are compromising sleep in order to get more done. And it's killing them. Literally, it's shutting their bodies down.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because I was just I had a coaching call with one of my clients last night. She was saying to me, all of this stuff is going on. She's so stressed out at work and every single aspect of her life. And I was like, well, how much sleep are you getting? She's like, well, I wake up tired. I'm waking up tired. And there's always something underneath that. And I mean, the fact was, she was getting 7 hours sleep a night, which is quite acceptable in today's society. I mean, I know it's probably between 7 and 9 hours that you should get every night, but it was back to her diet as well. So she wasn't eating during the day because she was so busy. And then all of a sudden it was just this thing that was kind of going round and round, and she's waking up feeling tired. And I was like, well, that's a sign that we need to do something, because if she's going into work tired, of course, she's not going to be able to think. She's not going to be productive. Everything that anyone says is going to trigger her off. Like, it's all connected to everything. And I read this quote not that long ago: you can't be brave if you're tired. And that's so important.
So good. Important. It's so important. And, I think we underestimate and forget that when you're under more stress, it means you need more recovery. And what do most people do? They create more stress and they sacrifice more sleep.
And especially on your fertility journey as well, because you know that you shouldn't be stressing. So then you're stressing about being stressed, and you're like, oh, and it's just this thing that just keeps on going over. And no wonder we get to that point where we're like, I am consumed. My head is going to explode right now.
100%. And I think a lot of women are so far from really nurturing their parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, right? That they tell me, like, well, I can't get more sleep because I literally can't get to sleep. And I tell them, restoration doesn't have to look like sleep. Ultimately, we would like it to, but even just giving yourself permission to go for a gentle walk, read a book, watch a movie, do things that really decompress you, because it's invaluable to your hormonal system.
Absolutely.
So those would be kind of there's a lot of things on that list, but those, like, even if today you just sat down and did deep breathing for 5 minutes, that's something you can do today that is actually immensely helpful for your body. It doesn't seem like a lot, but you might be surprised that 5 minutes of deep breathing every day, like, it's amazingly powerful, and it compounds over time, and it helps reduce that total stress load.
Yeah. And I think we get to that point where we're just so much in a rush that we're like, I just can't stop. I just don't have 5 minutes, which is just a crazy thing, because, as I was saying to my client, you're at work for 12 hours because you're not being productive. You're probably not being productive. If you just took an extra 30 minutes of a morning or 30 minutes just to go for a walk outside, you'd probably get everything that you wanted to get done in half the time, because you just, so I think we just need to make time. And we get so caught up in being so busy that I just don't have time to stop for 5 minutes. Whereas if we did and we made time, we would actually expand time. We'd actually have more time because we'd be more productive and we'd get all of that stuff done, and we wouldn't spend so much time inside our head as well, going over and over
100%.
and over.
Yeah. I tell clients all the time, if there's something you're not showing up to do that you want to be doing, right? Or you're doing something that you don't want to be doing, we have to go back to what we were talking about earlier. How are you thinking about it? Because when you tell yourself you don't have time, how does that make you feel? Well, it makes me feel super stressed. And when I feel stressed, you think I'm going to show up to do more stuff? No way. Right? And then the result is I prove to myself that I don't have time.
Yeah.
Your thoughts will always seek evidence to validate themselves. And that's a powerful thing to know, because if you're not controlling the tape that's playing in your head, you're going to end up doing a lot of things you don't want to be doing, and you're not going to do a lot of things that would benefit your life.
Yeah.
So taking responsibility for that mental chatter, again, is everything.
And I think it's being aware of it as well, because a lot of the time we have no idea what's going on in the background. And then all of a sudden I used to do this all of the time. So I'd be at home and when I was on maternity leave, and I would be at home and I'd be having all day, I'd be having this argument with my husband in my head. And I had no idea I was doing it. It was just in the background. So his dirty socks would be on the floor. I'd be like, and so by the time he got home, I was like, and I would just be angry. And he would be like, what is going on? And it's because I had no idea that I had this narrative in the back of my head all day. And so that's, and a lot of the time on this journey, we're triggered. We get triggered so much. And it could just be someone turns to us and asks us if they can have a cup of coffee or something. And then all of a sudden our reaction to that is completely outside the realms of acceptable. And we wonder why we did that. But really it's because there's been so much stuff that's going on inside our mind that someone just steps out of the boundaries, and then all of a sudden our reaction is so, unreasonable.
100%. And on that note, I mean, one of the most powerful things a woman can do in the day is to put pen to page and just do a brain dump. I call them thought downloads, brain dumps, call them whatever you want, but you're not censoring what you write. You're just writing. Like, you are literally taking everything up here and getting it out on paper. 3 to 5 minutes, you write nonstop. And then you can look at all your thoughts because they're right there. And a lot of women will say to me, I don't need to do that. I know what I'm thinking. To which my response is, no, you don't. You think you do, right? But I promise, if you do this exercise and you put pen to page and you start writing, you are probably going to be a little bit horrified. Like, you recognizing that you were wasting all this time and energy all day long around this narrative with your husband, right? Probably weren't aware of that until you did something to bring it to the forefront.
Yeah.
So when we can think about our thinking, everything changes. Right? When I get my thoughts out on paper, I can ask myself, oh, isn't it interesting that I am thinking this thought right now about something that happened? Is it useful to me? I love that question. Is it useful to me? Because a lot of times, I hate to admit it, my thinking is not useful to me. It's making my life harder. It's making me suffer unnecessarily. And the beauty of being human is we have this amazing prefrontal cortex that allows us to think about our thinking, to change the way we're thinking.
Yeah.
Right? We're like the only mammal that has that ability. And so utilize it. If a thought pattern is causing you to suffer, change it. Practice a new thought and make it something that's believable. You can't lie to yourself, right? But do try to practice a new way of thinking, because all a belief is, I remind people all the time, it's a practiced thought. It's a thought you think over and over and over again until now it's a belief.
Yeah.
So if you have beliefs that aren't serving you, you start changing them by practicing new thoughts.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And And I think a lot of the time we're hesitant to start that process because we're like, I just don't know what's going to come out on that piece of paper. And I know a lot of the ladies in this community, me included, very type A personality, very, high expectations of ourselves, all of that. And the thought of something coming out on a piece of paper that makes us feel, which I'm not even going to get into making us feel, but it makes us feel like we're failures. And that can be very confronting, and that can stop us from doing that as well. But it's a matter of giving ourselves some grace. And you said, I can't remember the exact phrase that you just said then, but I think you said that what you say is, isn't that interesting? Rather than beating yourself up and going, why am I thinking that? That's disgusting. That's terrible. That's all of these things. You're like, isn't that interesting? So instead of beating ourselves up about some thought that's going on in our head, isn't that interesting? I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And I love what you said about the fact that so many people have resistance to this type of exercise because they're afraid of what's going to come out. And this is the way I look at that. It's kind of like cleaning your house by shoving all the dirt under a rug or in the closets. So it's there, but you're just not willing to look at it. When you do that, eventually it's going to bite you in the butt, because eventually the closet can only hold so much stuff. And eventually the carpet's going to start to have a mound under it because there's so much dirt shoved under there, right? So when we expose the dirt, we can start to clean it up.
Yeah.
Right? But if we never expose it, we're kind of kidding ourselves that it's not there. It's there. You're just denying it.
Yeah.
Right. And that takes a lot of energy, by the way. To deny or ignore problems in your life requires a lot of energy. But think of the energy you'd be saving if you just opened those closets, lift up that rug, and just start asking yourself, how could I start cleaning up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And it's just like decluttering your wardrobe as well.
Totally.
It's one of those things that you look at and go, oh, I really don't want to do it. But once you do it, it's just it's weird. It's this amazing feeling of you feel lighter. You look at your closet now and you're like, I love it. I've got so many new clothes that I can wear, and you feel energized about it. And we're just talking about a wardrobe.
I know. Marie Kondo was really big for a while. I don't know if she still is, but she definitely had like a phase, right? Where everyone was talking about her. And I don't know exactly what her questions are, but it's like, does it bring you joy? Is it useful? Or I don't know what the other questions are, but I feel like we need to Marie Kondo our brains, right? Look at our thoughts and ask ourselves, is it useful? Does it make me feel good? Right? Does it bring me and here's the thing. I don't teach my clients that they should feel good all the time, because I don't believe that. But I do believe that we should be intentional about how we feel. So when I'm sad about someone dying, I'm choosing intentionally to feel sad because I want to mourn their death. Versus I'm feeling angry, right? Because something isn't going my way. And I just don't want to look at what's really behind that. There's a big difference there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's really just noticing what you're feeling and asking yourself, do I want to feel this way? Is it useful to me somehow? And if it's not, how am I going to pivot it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. So, and I'm asking this of most of the ladies that I'm interviewing, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to the woman who is consumed by her fertility journey right now?
Yeah. My answer is a hard buckets of grace. Buckets of grace, because grace to me is compassion. It is forgiveness, right? It is just kindness. It is restoration. It is gratitude. And I always remind myself, first and foremost, that I don't have to be grateful for all things, but I do benefit from being grateful in all things. And the difference is, I'm not saying be grateful for a failed pregnancy, right? But what about the circumstance right now are you grateful for? Do you have people supporting you? Do you have a loving husband? Is your body healing? Those are all things to be grateful for, right? So to me, just buckets of grace. you know, to help to facilitate the healing process and get yourself to a place where you feel sturdy on your feet again.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's not that you're moving past it. It's just that you're rising up again as a changed person.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would be the one thing that you would suggest that she does right now? Like just the one thing, if there was one thing that she could do to try to help pull herself out today, what would that be?
A lot of women probably won't like hearing this, but I would say thank your body. Because believe it or not, your body is doing the best it can with what it's got. And like I said before, there's a lot of different things that are contributing to the messaging that your body is hearing, right? So you've got your hormones, you've got all your chemistry, you've got your organ function. There's just a lot going on. And your body is taking that and interpreting it in the best way that it knows how, right? And we forget that. And we think that we're broken because we're not getting the outcome that we want. But the fact that you woke up breathing this morning, the fact that you're listening to this summit, right? The fact that you get to love hard on the people in your life today, that's because of your body. So don't get caught in this space where you're hating on it and beating it up and telling it there's something wrong with it. There may be some things that could work better, right? But the only way you're going to be motivated to find the solutions is if you're talking to yourself in a way that makes you feel like finding solutions. And if someone's yelling at me and telling me what a failure I am, you think I want to like go meet them for coffee? No way. I don't want anything to do with them. So I think thank your body for all that it is doing right, because it's doing a lot right.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So if people want to connect with you outside of here, do you just want to let us know where they can find you? Now, you do have a 5-part video series as well that I'm going to put the link in the comments below that all of the women who are part of this summit get free access to that as well. So do you just want to let us know what else you've got, how they can follow you, how they can listen to your podcast as well? I'd love to hear about, you know, and I did have a question that I wanted to ask you in terms of grace and grit. Where does that come from as well? So do you just want to cover all of that?
Okay. So I'll start with grace and grit. So, grace and grit it's really so multidimensional, but I came into the world a dancer. I got really heavily involved in strength training. And so there is that grace and grit physical element, but really at the root of it, I feel like deep health, which is really what I encourage my clients to find, because deep health is multidimensional health. It's mental health, spiritual health. It's all those pieces we talked about earlier. And in order to find that sweet spot for yourself, you have to respect yourself enough and be compassionate enough with yourself and like yourself enough to show up to do the work. Right? So there's two ends of the spectrum. There's respect and love. And then out of that respect and love, there's discipline. Now, I know women who use self-love as rationalization for never doing any work. And I know women who use self-discipline to the point of self-destruction. So I'm not talking about living at either end of the spectrum. I'm talking about finding the sweet spot somewhere in the middle. And where exactly that is so different and so personal for each person. So that's why my company name is Grace and Grit. The podcast you mentioned is on iTunes. It's Grace and Grit, helping women everywhere live happier, healthier, and more fit. And we have almost 200 episodes, which is mind blowing. And graceandgrit.com. Like those are probably the easiest places to find me. And the 5-part video series, yes, definitely register for it if you're listening to this. If you're someone who realizes that there's a big difference between knowing and doing. Because really what I teach my clients is I teach them consistency to build confidence, right? Which ultimately allows them to lead themselves better. So the 5-part video series really kind of gets back to the basics of self-care and why these elements are so profoundly impactful to the human body. And this is not theory, this is science. These are the things that we know improve biology. So I'm not telling you to be vegan. I'm not telling you, I'm not going to any extremes, right? I'm telling you the basics of what we know that helps to nourish the human body. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will say, well, I already know those things. Great. But are you practicing them, right? And this video series is to help you actually put rubber to the road.
I love that. Excellent. All right, Courtney, thank you so much. There is so much stuff in there, so much goodness. I just want to thank you for showing up, for being here for all of us. It really is helpful. So I appreciate your time.
Oh my gosh. And thank you for the work you're doing in the world, right? It's just so important and so needed. And what a great thing for all these women to have somebody like you just kind of leading the charge on fertility and making it a less painful and less painful process.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.